Welcome! My name is Kelly Anderson, and this is Fanimated, the animation fan podcast where we get a chance to geek out about our favorite animated media. Emma Martin is here with me to discuss the 2010 Disney animation film Tangled. This is one of our absolute favorite animated films, and we can't wait to tell you why. But first, I'd like to say thank you to our Patreon donors who make this podcast possible. If you'd like to help support the technical costs of the show and get the chance to vote for upcoming episode topics, check out patreon.com/fanimated for more info. Now, spoiler warning if you haven't seen Tangled, and let's get started and let's get animated. Wonderful to see you in person, in the same room as me, here to record about Tangled.
Oh, Kelly, it is so good to be here in the same room, in person, and record Tangled with you.
Oh, thanks. We are talking about one of my all-time favorite films of all time ever, period, exclamation point, Tangled by Disney. First computer animated Disney princess film, and of course it came out the same year as How to Train Your Dragon. Like 2010 was just like the year for great films, animated films, and Tangled has a special place in my heart. So excited to talk about it with you.
Yes, I can say that Kelly has been waiting a long time to talk about this one in particular, and it's because it's sacred. Like, this is just such a beautiful film, as well as How to Train Your Dragon. Like, they're just both so phenomenal that you just have to take time and really prepare yourself, because it is just a beautiful work of art, and we want to do it justice.
It's true. It is a beautiful, beautiful work of art, and like just another stepping stone in Disney history, specifically Disney princess history.
Mm-hmm.
It's the 50th Disney feature-length film,
yes.
And it's the first computer animated Disney princess. So it really is like another foundational block that has led to things like Frozen, like the huge, amazing like franchise of Frozen, and beyond. Who knows what will happen in the future, what Disney will create. So it's very, very exciting, as well as just that it's a beautiful story and it's so fun, and I love these characters deeply and passionately.
Absolutely. And I love that you point out that Frozen note, because like we all love Frozen. We've established that even on this podcast. But you know, Frozen wouldn't have stemmed like without that 50th movie Tangled. Like, yes. It really just started a whole snowball effect.
Absolutely, because now there's Moana too, and
I love Moana.
Just so many great things. And it's true, it all, like, Disney needed Tangled as that stepping block to get to Frozen and Moana and all these other things. So it's very exciting looking back on it, and also just rewatching it now. It still just has the same life and vibrancy as it did the first time I saw it.
Yes, and we just feel so full at the end of the movie. Like, that was one thing we noted the most, was just like, wow, I just feel so happy and fulfilled right now. Like, yeah. Everything is great.
It's so satisfying. Everything is written so well, and of course animated beautifully.
Yes.
So, if you haven't seen Tangled, please do so, first of all. And if you haven't, the basic premise is that it is the Rapunzel story, but it, of course, is told in a different way. There is a sun drop that falls from the sky and lands, and a flower blooms from that sun drop, and it has magical healing properties. A vain old woman, Mother Gothel, finds this flower and uses it to stay young for centuries. But meanwhile, in the nearby kingdom of Corona, the queen is sick and also is pregnant, and so the king sends everyone out to go find the flowers to save his wife, and they do, and she is saved, and the baby is born, and it's beautiful baby girl Rapunzel, and it so happens that Rapunzel is born with the same magical properties as the flower. So when you sing a special song, she is able to heal. Her hair is used to heal. So Mother Gothel goes into the castle, steals Rapunzel away, and of course, as we all know, hides her in a tower in the forest. That is where Rapunzel grows up alone, believing Mother Gothel is her mom, and believing that the world outside is a dangerous, dangerous place. In walks Flynn Rider into all of this. He is a thief. He's just hiding away and finds the tower. The two end up going on this little adventure out into the real world, and everything else is history.
Yeah. Yes, I think you get the majority of the story from that plot synopsis right there. Good job, Kelly. What's interesting is that as we were looking through the bonus features on the DVD regarding how the movie was originally going to start, like the different storybook beginnings, they had kind of that classic Disney hero book opens, and we
hear a narrator.
Exactly. Relaying the story just like Kelly did. And what was interesting is that one of the first options was very similar to the original Rapunzel story where, you know, whether it's a cabbage or whatever the man steals from the witch's garden. So like Mother Gothel would be the witch and the king would be the man who stole the cabbage. In the same way, he was stealing the sundrop flower. So that was like one of the original openings. But I'm really glad that they didn't go with the original storyline, because that's kind of the significance of Tangled, is that it does have that element of the classic story of Rapunzel, but it is so much more because they added so much more depth to it. Like another reason why we love the live action Cinderella, because it's classic, but also its own story.
Absolutely. 100% agree. And I'm so glad, and the directors even talked about this, how they wanted to make it fresh and new, so they ended up scrapping the storybook beginning, just like most classic Disney princesses. And I do love how it starts with Flynn narrating everything, or Eugene narrating everything.
Our favorite person.
He's our favorite character.
Opens the story.
About how he died.
Yeah.
But it's so good and so well done, because having everything fully animated at the beginning, you're just like immediately in the story and in this world, and really get to understand the premise. They have to do a lot of groundwork in that first scene of, here are all of the little pieces and parts that you need to understand. Like Rapunzel has the power, and when Mother Gothel snips her hair, like it turns brown. There are so many elements and so many things they have to lay the groundwork for in that short amount of time, and they just did it in a really clean and precise way. And you know, Zachary Levi is voicing this narration, so it's great.
Yes. And it's amazing because even though it's a lot of different details, all of those details are necessary in order to get the setup correct, which is just incredible. So they did a really good job of making it flow really easily. And what I love about Flynn narrating it is that, like, so originally it could have been any narrator, but what I love about Zachary Levi narrating it is that he brings us to a place of comfort almost, because he's starting right off the bat with a dramatic joke. He's like, this is the story of how I died. But don't worry, it's a fun story. Like so, you know, that like dramatic, jokey attitude like is really helpful to just like bring us into like, oh, this is going to be an interesting story. Oh, but it'll be fun too. Like,
exactly.
I love that.
I love it so much. So do you remember the first time you saw this film? You saw it in theaters, didn't you?
I did, yes. I saw it 3 times in theaters because I was obsessed. I loved it so much. So the first time I saw it in theaters with my family, I just remember just absolutely loving it so much. It was just so breathtaking, especially like, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. The lantern scene is just freaking gorgeous. Yes. And so like, I was just so blown away, and just I'm a romantic at heart, let's be honest. But just the romance between Eugene and Rapunzel is just so fun, and just, I don't know, they're perfect for each other. But anyway, so I saw it in theaters with my family. I was just blown away by how funny it was, and just my family quotes movies all the time, but we were just quoting from the beginning. And so then my sister was just like, do you want to see the movie again? I was like, yeah, I do. So like 2 days later, we went to the theater and saw it in 3D. So that was a fun experience. Like, kind of had like not the cleanest glasses, so it was a little foggy, which was unfortunate. But I did really appreciate the lantern scene when like all the lanterns are coming around you,
Yeah.
and you're like, wow, I am part of this scene, this moment. It's so beautiful. And then lastly, I'll note on how I was telling Kelly that the summer that it like was finally on DVD, I don't remember when it came out exactly, but when it was on DVD, we bought it first thing, and then I watched that movie like almost every day of the summer. Like, granted, probably not every single day, but I watched it a lot. Mm-hmm. I just loved it so much, and Rapunzel is so like awkward and cute and naive and so fun to like see her grow, and just so there's like that little bit of relatability there, but and everybody loves Jean. I mean, how could you not? But but it was just a movie I just treasured so much. And granted, after that summer I had to take a little bit of a break, but now when I go back and watch it, I'm like, wow, this movie is just so good.
Mm-hmm. I saw it in theaters too originally, and I was immediately like blown away. I went into the theater, I think with like expectations of excitement, like I was looking forward to this one for sure, but just how deeply I ended up caring about Eugene and Rapunzel's story, and how well written it was, and just how like shocked I was that they killed him.
Yeah, thanks Disney. Like, threw that one at us.
This is kind of a dark story, yes, mm-hmm. and how just deeply I felt about his death, and realizing like how deeply connected as an audience member I was to this story and to these characters, and how I'm just fascinated with how they did that in an hour and a half time span, and I still it still just like tears my heart up when he cuts her hair and dies, and I'm just like,
yeah, it is super intense and dark. Like, Disney threw a lot at us, which
yes.
It's funny, like Laura mentioned on the Frozen pod that like she sees Tangled as more of an adult film, and I understand that perspective, and that like, yeah, you have a villain who could be a very real life character. She's super abusive, like with her words and emotions, and you have death, and you have just all these intense things playing like throughout the plot, and just involved with the characters, and so it is very dark when you like really look at it, but I kind of love that.
Absolutely. So of course I was a huge fan right from the beginning. Loved all of the music. It just, up until that point, I really don't think there was a really good solid Disney musical like that. Like, I felt like Princess and the Frog was kind of forced. Like, it didn't feel
interesting.
I don't know. I've never been a huge fan of that one, but like this one just felt, the thing about Tangled is it just felt natural. It felt like the story was real. Like, they just, the setting, the characters, the plot, like everything was so well done that nothing seemed forced. Everything seemed natural, and I could believe this and be a part of it and feel deeply connected to it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Also, when I was in high school, my show choir partner and I sang I See the Light.
Oh, why you never told me this? This is adorable.
We did. We sang it at our like little cabaret thing we would do in high school, and we had a friend who played the harp.
Oh, whoa.
And so it was like the harp, and like we sang. Anyway, so totally obsessed with this whole story, and all of the music is gorgeous.
Yeah, I remember after it came out, I would just listen to the song by ear and try to figure out the piano part. And that was like my project for a while, because I just love that song so much. It's a magical song, let's be honest. Like, you just see it and you're like, oh, somebody sing to me like that.
Yes, it's such a good song. And I just love that point in the story too. It's just so satisfying. Mm-hmm. The thing about I See the Light, and we'll talk about all of the songs, but where you're at in the story, it's like Eugene is starting to realize all these things about Rapunzel, and like her bravery, and her like ability to just kind of jump in, and like she has such passion for things, and you can see that leading up. And then, of course, the Kingdom Dance, which is one of the best scenes in the movie.
Right. Not necessarily like a song in the sense that everybody's singing, but like just a beautiful song montage.
It's a great montage, and you just see them connecting in all these ways, and it's so well done and beautiful, and the pacing of this whole film is great, but that montage...
It's gold.
So good. And so you can already see they're like, they've done so much and they've gone so far, and their relationship has built so much up until this point. And I see the light as that moment where they see the light, and I just love it. And I love that Rapunzel and Eugene, that's like, the moment where they realize like they are each other's new dream. Like,
right.
And they're just in this place of such like freedom and such like clear communication, and she's willing to be like, I have the crown, and he like doesn't care about it as much anymore, and it just melts my heart. Yes. And it's such a perfect scene. And then of course it has to be terribly ruined when they're about to kiss, and then they don't, and I'm like, come on.
The worst moment ever for all of us. Like, it just makes us cry inside, or maybe externally too. What is interesting about the music in this film is that there aren't a lot of songs. Like, there are a couple of songs and a couple of reprises, and that's about it. But they fit in so well, and they just, like you said earlier, they're just such a natural element to the film. They just, like, flow right in. So would you say that I See the Light is your favorite song out of all of them?
Yes. Hands down. Yes.
Yes. I love it.
And visually speaking, too, just like you said, with the 3D element, all of the lighting in this movie is fantastic, and there's so many scenes I could point out. I See the Light, though, of course, the lighting is fantastic, and the way it just feels so warm and inviting. And you pointed out something really interesting about all of the lanterns in the kingdom when they come out, and I absolutely love that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so when Rapunzel's parents, aka the king and queen, who Rapunzel doesn't know are her parents yet, every year they light the first lantern as everybody else follows. And what I find really visually appealing and lovely that the directors decided to do this is as soon as the king and queen light their lamp at the top where the castle is, because the castle's at the top of the hill, the lanterns start to light up down the winding path down the hill. So it looks like Rapunzel's hair, how her hair lights up when she starts to sing. So her hair starts glowing at her head and then follows down the strands of her hair. And I just find that really like one of those gems that you're like, oh my gosh, like the way that the lanterns are lighting up are just like Rapunzel's hair. It's just fascinating.
Yeah, it's a really cool visual that they added there, and I love it so much.
Mm-hmm. I just love that scene in general. We can like talk further about that animation because that is probably one of the like most incredible scenes, just with especially with the lighting, because even like when you like look closely at buildings with lanterns floating by, you can see each individual like light and shadow, and oh my gosh, it's so realistic, but it's also animation in that it's its own thing, and I'm just blown away by and the color too, like the warm colors that just wrap around everybody. And like when you can see the lanterns through like Flynn and Rapunzel's eyes reflecting off of that, or when the lantern comes close to the water near Eugene and Rapunzel's boat, and she like lifts it up back into the sky because it's drooping. That moment I love because you can see like the light like move away from her face, and I just it's so visually beautiful.
It is. It's absolutely gorgeous, and I love every moment.
If we're going to talk further about songs, though I See the Light is definitely my favorite as well. I mean, it's just so golden, literally. But I actually really love the reprise of Mother Knows Best.
Oh.
Which, please don't hate me for that, fans. But it's just so intriguing because, like, the first song of Mother Knows Best is just so, like, you know, her trying to be a warm mother and, like, why do you want to go out into the world? There's all these scary things and I'm here to protect you kind of voice coming from that. But in the reprise, it's just, like, it switches like to this like you see more of her selfish voice come through, which is just like one of those moments that gives you shivers and you're like, oh my gosh,
Yes.
what? Especially when Rapunzel stands up for herself and is like, no. And Mother Gothel's like, no. Oh, I see how it is then. And then you're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But just like the switch in tempo and even like the chord progression changes to a more minor chord progression rather than the previous song. And it's just those little changes that like totally shift the scene like to like, oh, I was your loving mother, but looks like the tables have turned, so I'm really putting my foot down, but not in a loving way.
Yeah, and that reprise is so great too with, again, the lighting, because when it's like this warm campfire, everything's great, and then when Mother Gothel comes, like the fog rolls in and things get darker, and she sings, and then you can visually see it, like it's so cool when she like goes back into the forest, the fog like follows her, and then it's like that warm campfire feeling again, and they're like, oh wow, what just happened?
What just happened?
So let's go into characters and start with Mother Gothel, since we're there.
Absolutely.
She is one of the best characters. I mean, they're all fantastic, but she in particular is done so well to make her such a realistic villain. She is not evil just to be evil. She is vain. She does everything for herself. She's a sociopath. She's absolutely a sociopathic. She manipulates people to get what she wants. She manipulates Rapunzel. She uses an abusive relationship to keep her where she wants to. She, does that thing where she's like, says something horrible and then is like, oh, I'm just kidding, darling. Or,
right.
She puts the blame on Rapunzel, like, oh, don't take everything so seriously, all of these things. And that is verbal, mental, emotional abuse. And she is one of the scariest Disney villains.
Yeah, absolutely. How she cunningly makes it seem like it's Rapunzel's fault. Like, that's like the scariest kind of villain because she's turning Rapunzel against her own self. So Rapunzel has to find that, that place of like, no, I believe in me. I believe in who I am and my dreams. I love Mother Gothel as a villain too because of how real she is. Something I noticed with the animation, if you notice in Mother Knows Best and like at that campfire scene when she is singing the reprise, she circles Rapunzel constantly. Ooh. Like she'll like around the campfire, she'd put the bag, like satchel around her and then like circled around her. Or in Mother Knows Best, she'll like grab her arms and circle around. And she is like a form of a vulture. Like she is going in for the prey. Like, and I just like didn't think about that until this last time we watched it. But I was just like, man, she just keeps circling her. Like, she's circling her again. Like, I just was like, wow, does she do any other blocking? And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like, the reason why she's circling is that protectiveness of like, this is mine and you are not leaving my bubble. Like, this is my prey. This is what I want and I'm keeping it safe for me. And, so it gives that vulture kind of perspective, which I thought was really interesting.
Very interesting. And so true. That is Mother Gothel, for sure. The other thing about Mother Gothel is that she's always touching Rapunzel's hair.
Yes.
It's the hair she cares about, not her. So, like, even when she kisses her, it's on the hair. It's on the head. Right. And when she
pats her head.
Pats her head.
Yes.
Strokes her hair. But she doesn't do a lot of
physical
touch other than her hair. She's always focused on her hair.
Right. That is a good point. I didn't think about that too. Yes.
It's all little things.
Rapunzel is like seen as an item rather than a human. And what's interesting to debate regarding her and her powers is like, there's this sun drop that's been gifted to this earth, this land, and it's that complication of, do you like want to share a gift with the world, but do you also want to cherish that gift? And like, it's easy to look at it like when it's in a sunflower form, like to look at the plant of like, should this be shared or should this be cherished? Like when you see it as a plant, you're like, well, it should be shared with everybody, right? Mm-hmm. But when it's in Rapunzel, like now she's a human with feelings, like, you know, I wonder, like, even after the story ends, does she, well, she ends without her hair, but if she, like, were to keep her hair, like, would she want to share it with everybody, or would she just want to, like, just kind of be to herself, you know?
We had talked about if there was a way that she could have kept her hair, but it would still have been dangerous, because then people would still be wanting to, you know, take advantage of her always, because she has this great power that everyone knows.
It's hard because Rapunzel as herself and wanting the best for others, like, if she, like, had the option to keep her hair and its powers, I'm sure that she would want to keep it so that way she can, like, help the people of the kingdom. Like, if there's plenty of hurt people and sick people every day in the kingdom, I'm sure. And, like, I would assume that she'd want to keep that in order to help others, because that's just Rapunzel's personality. She just loves people and her kingdom. And, but there's also that, you know, battle of, like, always living in fear of being, you know, captured for your hair.
Yeah, Rapunzel would be a trap to herself. Like, she would always want to be helping people, and I feel like either way, Eugene would end up wanting to cut it, because otherwise she's just, like, a slave to herself of, like, wanting to help everyone and not doing anything for herself.
Right, and he would want her to be free because he cares so much. Can we talk about Eugene?
We can totally talk about Eugene.
So when I saw this in theaters, I know Flynn isn't, like, a prince. You know, he's not born of royalty, as far as we know.
Watch the series to find out more.
I gave Kelly a little look there, but I'm not going to spoil in regards to that. Anyway, besides the point, when I first saw Tangled, and Tangled the series wasn't a thing, I was like, holy crap. Could a Disney prince be any more gorgeous? And more wonderful. Like, Flynn is just so great in that, like, well, one, he is so handsome. Wow. But also, I mean, that smolder, come on, we all fall for it. But he's just, his voice, okay, I love Zachary Levi. He is an amazing voice actor and actor in general, but man, you hear his voice and you're like, wow, I feel so good. Like, you just feel so comforted, and it's just, like, very deep, but not, like, super bass at the same time. And oh my gosh, he's just so great because, yeah, he's a little bit selfish, but he's also, at the end of the day, he just cares so much. Especially, like, by the end of the film. Of course, he was more selfish towards the beginning, but he really had a turning point eventually.
It's that character development.
Yes.
And it's so good because he is so focused on himself and what his silly dream, and he even, you know,
which is getting money, by the way,
which is just to be rich and be alone. Because I don't think he, like, had, you know, as an orphan and then as just a thief trying to make his way, and he, you know, he's helping the Stabbington brothers, and obviously, like, they don't have the best intentions for him either, and he's just in this world that is the very opposite of Rapunzel. He's lived in this dark world, and he's, like, a part of this dark, you know, stuff, and he has to, like, partake in these things that he feels he has to just to survive. And connecting with Rapunzel, and I think for me, like, she just has so much wonder and excitement and amazement about everything that like, he is able to start seeing those same things too with Rapunzel by his side. And it just, like, makes my heart warm because like he was able to, like, be a part of that and see through her perspective, and then actually be close to someone. And I don't think that, you know, in his life previously he, like, had that, and you know, maybe he, you know, was treated selfishly by others too, and, like, blocked himself off, whatever the reason, like, his heart was hardened before, and then it softens with Rapunzel there. And I just love that development, his development to ultimately making the ultimate sacrifice of, he's going to die so that Rapunzel can be free.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful.
So powerful. This story is so powerful, and it makes me so happy.
Yeah, it's crazy to look at Flynn's story because, you're right. He was an orphan. He didn't have anybody, and he chose thievery in order to survive, which could be quite understandable in his circumstances. Mm-hmm. But like when he first meets Rapunzel, he looks at her like a child almost. Yes. And like he's just like, oh, you're so naive and you know nothing. But it's when she goes to the Snuggly Duckling.
Yes.
And she's surrounded by ruffians and thugs, and she gets them to find their humanity by singing about their dreams. And he was like, wow, this girl is capable of so much for having lived in a tower her whole life.
Yes, and he even, because he knows that, ruffians and thugs are one of her biggest fears, and he leads her there on purpose. And despite that, he sees her stand up to them when he's being harassed. Like, she stands up to one of her bigger fears, and even you can see everyone in that pub is shocked, but he is just very shocked too. He's watching that scene, his mind is probably going like, you're gonna get attacked, girl. Like, what are you doing?
What did you just do?
Yeah, and then the scene into the chase and the big gorge. I love the moment when she just, they're trapped and she just immediately flings her hair and swings across, and you don't see Eugene's face, but you see the back, his back and the back of his head, and you can see the animators. It's all these little things, guys. He just steps back a little bit, and you can see that, and you can almost see the shock on it and in
his body language.
In his body language, and that he was impressed by that, and they just make such a great team in that whole scene, fighting Maximus, and the Stabbington brothers are there, and the guards. It's just, I love that so much.
Absolutely.
Also, yes, Flynn is gorgeous, and we know why.
Well, the eyes do not fail. That's one reason.
For sure. But in my art book of Tangled,
which is gorgeous.
We've been staring through it. It's so good. They talk about how they had what is called a hot guy meeting.
Get this, guys. People are getting paid for this.
All the girls in the studio came in and voted on all of these hot actors and hot guys. And they put up all these celebrity photos, and they would tell the animators what they liked about each photo, what they liked about these hot guys. And so that's what they put together and tried to create with Eugene, is all of these different parts of all these different people, and I think that's just really funny that
right
that they needed to have a hot guy meeting to make him attractive.
Absolutely. That's so great. And well, they did a good job because wow. But it's interesting looking through this book. If you listeners ever get a chance to look at the artwork of Tangled, he originally looked a lot more like Kristoff from Frozen.
Yeah, a bigger guy, and
bear hug kind of man who, and I think you said that they were talking about him being a hunter in the forest who's a little more gentle, and Rapunzel was more of the spunky, crazy one.
Right. They were very different personalities at one point. And much more like an Anna-Kristoff relationship, rather than what ended up being Rapunzel and Eugene.
Yeah. I just find it interesting that, that artwork, how it carries over and how you see those similarities. Because even, side tangent going to Rapunzel, there's a couple, images that almost look like Ariel. And it's because,
that's because of Glenn Keane.
Right, the artist.
Glenn Keane is, the father of all Disney princesses, and he's amazing.
Absolutely.
Who's better, Max or Pascal?
Ooh.
Which sidekick's your favorite?
Okay. Pascal is adorable, but I love Maximus. Because Maximus is literally his own person, despite being a horse. He has his own personality. And Pascal does too, but I just love... He has such a moral compass. And, like, everything abides by the law, according to his book. And he's just such... a funny personality because of how serious he is. That's a lot of my humor. I love the people who are fond of dry humor in that, like, they'll just say something bizarre with the straightest face, and that just kills me. And so in the same way, Maximus is, like, super serious and, like... So the bizarre things he does make me laugh. One of my favorite Max moments, though, is when he's looking around the forest and he sees a poster, a flyer of Flynn Rider, wanted poster. And he doesn't recognize the face until he puts his hoof over Flynn's nose. And then he's like, oh, that's him.
Yeah. I love that running gag that Flynn's nose is always wrong. And man, when we talk about Tangled the series, like, they keep that joke running and it's amazing.
Because, like, you know, Eugene is gorgeous and, like, but it's like... to humble him, keep him humble, because he is quite conceited, like, I'm so great, I'm beautiful and wonderful, and then it's like, oh, they can't get my nose right. Like, it's just like that little, here's your little humble pie for today. It's just so great.
So good.
Definitely Maximus, I would say. Also, I love the development of Max and Flynn's relationship, because, you know, Max has been chasing Flynn his whole life because he's a thief and wanted constantly. But when Flynn is finally, like, warming up to Rapunzel and, like, seeing her perspective, Rapunzel's like, okay, just give me 24 hours to get my dream. And Max agrees to it. So anyway, like, they enjoy the day. But, like, fast forward to the point where Flynn eventually gets arrested. Max is the one to gather the gang and to help rescue Flynn, and they have this beautiful moment on top of the castle where, like, Flynn lands on Max, and he's like, oh my goodness, Max, thank you. No, like, thank you. And he's just, like, really appreciative of, like, how far they've grown, and Max is like, okay, we kind of have to get going, so...
I 100% agree. That is my favorite thing about Max, is just that relationship between him and Eugene. And even from the very beginning, I mean, those two have such a fun relationship, and it's so funny. And when, even the beginning, the forest chase scene, and Eugene ends up on Max, and, like, they're chasing after the bed, like, toppling on top of each other, that whole scene, and then they fall down the gorge, like, that is such a fun scene. It's one of my favorites. And I love how Max is portrayed like a dog.
Right.
He's sniffing around, and he's, like, you know, acts that way to make it a little more obvious, like, how his emotions are. And so I really, really appreciate that about Max.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
What I love about Pascal, though, is just the thought that, like, he really is Rapunzel's best friend, because she doesn't have any other friends. And something I noticed this time watching it, Pascal always hides when Gothel is there. Like, he always camouflages himself. And I think I never noticed that before, but yeah, he probably does hide himself from Mother Gothel, because would Mother Gothel want Rapunzel to have, like, you know, a pet, like, someone else there? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and, well, you know, you don't just get a chameleon anywhere. You get a chameleon from outside the tower. So the fact that something from outside the tower is in the tower is, like, frightening, of, like, oh no, that's just, like, another example of something that's gonna hurt you, or that's dangerous, or, oh, you've been in the outside world, like, I'm losing trust for you. And then, of course, it's Pascal that, you know, trips Mother Gothel, and then she falls down the tower. Pascal's the real murderer, guys. Like, let's be honest.
She was turning to dust anyway, but
she was pretty old.
That scene is one of my favorite scenes obviously already talked about it. Like, Eugene's death, wow, impactful. Gah! And Mother Gothel's demise. But that's another really great example of just the lighting and the tower in general. The tower itself is such, like, an important piece of the story, and so much happens in the tower. Like, thinking about that last scene, compared to, like, the very first scene when Rapunzel is, like, doing all of her things in the morning. Like, it's so bright and happy and fun and warm, and then you get the entire opposite, very stark contrast of that scene at the end where everything is gray and dark and deep. And I just love, 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 love how one setting can portray such deep and different emotions.
Absolutely. Like, before Flynn or Eugene comes back to life with this last sun drop, you have just a still image of, like, the brown hair all over the floor and the shattered mirror pieces, and everything is, you know, dark and bleak and everything's terrible. But once Eugene, like, has his last breath, and after Rapunzel sung the last of the spell, like, it doesn't just go right to healing. Like, it has a camera shot, if you will, from the top view showing the whole scene from above, and you just have to sit with it for a moment, and you're like, wow, this is really it. Like, dang it, Disney, why'd you have to why'd you have to crush my soul?
It's so impactful.
But the image, like, you have to sit there with that mood and that lighting, and then eventually it, you know, comes back to the healing part of it. But then once he's healed, it's sunny again. It's light out. And I don't know if that's, like, a magical thing or if it just is suddenly morning.
You can notice in some of the exterior shots of that it's just, like, there are clouds that come and, like, hang over. So I think it's more of a clouds is covering the sun situation.
Sure.
But we even noticed this time around, watching the credits, just how many people they have had in the lighting department. It's massive. And
so long.
And obviously, like, they did their job really, really well. They needed that army of people. And just the color and lighting and everything that's done in this film, it creates such phenomenal atmospheres. And I really love it.
I also love the multiple works of art throughout the film. Like, the animation itself is an artwork, but even, like, Rapunzel's style of art, her paintings on the tower, like, are gorgeous, and they're a whole different artist. Like, you have those paintings, like, to represent Rapunzel's style of painting, and that is just what blows my mind, is that there's so many different art styles. It's not just, like, one group of artists, like, went with the same, like, vibe throughout the whole film, but it's like, nope, an artist is adhering to this character's style of art. Like, that just blows my mind. And I love Rapunzel's art so much. It's so pretty.
Yes, Rapunzel's artwork is so beautiful, and it's done by the phenomenal Claire Keane, who is the daughter of Glenn Keane. So super cool that, like, they worked on this big project together, and you can really see that art style is so fun, and it just, like, connects with Rapunzel so well, and, like, she just has, like, this brightness and just, like, the colors that are used and everything. It's just so cool. I agree.
Yeah, and she paints a lot of, like, birds and her dancing, which are both, like, very freeing images, which I love about that too. And even, like, in the credits scene, when the credits are rolling, like, you have a whole different form of art. You have these images of Eugene and Rapunzel, like, journeying together, which is super fun. And there's even, like, some characters that you'll eventually come across in Tangled the series, but I'm not gonna say that now.
Yeah, it's so cool to have seen that.
So I love that.
Are there any scenes that we haven't talked about, Emma, that you really, really love?
Yeah, so this isn't particularly a scene, it's more of a moment, but I mean, there is a scene leading up to it. It's just after Gothel has left the tower. She's going to get some paint for Rapunzel for her birthday, and they've just had kind of a fight well, they have had a fight about Rapunzel trying to convince Mother Gothel that she wants to see these lights, and she's like, no way, Jose. Anyway, so we get to this point where she's just like really sad that this is what her circumstances are, and so she's just waiting by the windowsill and has this really sad look on her face and is just like, here I'll be, this is where I'm gonna be, like, I'm not going anywhere, kind of attitude. And I love the imagery because she lets her hair out the window and it just flows in the wind, and right in the background there's a waterfall, so the waterfall and her hair look like they're flowing the same, and it's just so beautiful to look at. So like I said, it's not really a scene, it's just more of that moment visually that just is like, wow, that waterfall is like her hair. And I think that's what's most fascinating about this film, is because of those little trinkets here and there. There's always like that, oh, I see what they did there, like moments. Yes. And I love that.
I really, really love / hate the scene where they are Eugene and Rapunzel are stuck like in the cave and the water is rising, because that's kind of like one of my greatest fears. Like, it just like, I deeply am like, it causes me anxiety, but I love it because that's like one of the first moments like they actually break, and Eugene is actually like, oh, my real name is Eugene, and I just love that little scene with them together, like thinking they're gonna like drown, and then of course she's like, I have a hair that glows when I sing.
It's like, wait, what?
What?
I didn't see that coming.
Yes. And then of course the whole scene after that, when they're at the campfire, and they're, you know, actually being real with each other and talking, and his hand is healed. It's so good.
It's like, don't freak out. It's like, I'm not freaking out. What?
I'm just very interested in your hair and the magical qualities it possesses.
No, the cave scene is really interesting because, like, it is really hard for me to take in that moment where they're, like, being vulnerable with each other, because as I physically see the water rising, I'm just, like, tense. And even though I've seen it over and over and over again, like, I'm still like, oh my gosh, they could drown this time.
No.
But, and it's just, you finally, like, let the air you've been holding in just go and they, like, get out. But, yeah, I love, that's, like, one of my favorite lines when Flynn is on the shore and he's like, her hair glows. I didn't see that coming. Like, it's just so great. But yeah, the campfire scene is just absolutely beautiful. Like, we've already talked about the lighting, of course, and just the warm campfire glow. But just also, you know, her singing over him to heal his hand, and just the little sacrifice she made for him to, like, help him and protect him. And it's just really sweet. And another, like, animation note is that, like, Rapunzel's eyes are very empowering and very, like, but also, they really help characters settle down. Like, her eyes are what made Max settle down and relax. So she was just, like, staring up at him, and he's like, whoa, her eyes are so mesmerizing. And in the same way, there's a moment where Flynn and Rapunzel share eye contact, and they're like, wow. Okay, I'll get firewood. I love it.
Can we take a moment to appreciate the king and queen?
Oh, yes.
I love that they have such very little screen time, but the animators did such a phenomenal job expressing their emotions without any dialogue.
I know. Like, they don't say anything.
They don't say a word.
Oh, I love it.
And they're barely on screen, but you can feel it.
Yes, like with the lighting ceremony and the tear coming down the king's cheek. Oh my gosh, kills me every time.
You just ache for them so much, like living for 18 years without their daughter and feeling like it's their fault, and when it kind of is.
Well, then again, when she was a baby, they didn't really know, like, that she would have powers.
Either way, it's your daughter. Like, lock the window.
I guess there have been a couple of people who have climbed the castle, Flynn being one of them, so, like, maybe they should think about that.
All right, we can't end the podcast until I talk about Rapunzel's hair.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of essential to the whole plot.
Very essential. And one of the biggest technological advances of this film is Rapunzel's hair.
Yeah.
Hair is one of those computer animated things that is really difficult to animate and to make look real. Looking at things historically, it's just really hard because you've got all those individual strands and all these things going on. You want it to move in a way that's realistic and interact with the environment realistically. Even going back as far as The Incredibles, I remember The Incredibles, Violet's hair.
Oh, yep, I remember.
Violet's hair used to be a big deal. Like, that was a big step there. Yep. And here we have Rapunzel, and she has like 70 feet of hair.
Right. A little bit of a step up.
Wow. Yes. Senior software engineer Kelly Ward has spent 6 years writing programs to make it move the way they wanted it to.
Oh my gosh.
6 years.
Commitment.
I mean...
Perseverance. Way to go.
Wow. They didn't solve all of the problems with Rapunzel's hair until March of the year it came out. It came out that fall.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. I didn't know that.
So they eventually, figured out and improved the software, and obviously it looks absolutely gorgeous because they want to make sure it can float believably in the water and flow in the wind, just like that scene you really like.
Mm-hmm. But also have weight. So that way, the way it lands on her tower floor or on the forest ground or something like that. And I also love how she can really work her hair as far as, using it to open things and whatnot.
Exactly. So they were able to do that with this software program instead of forcing animators to do every single moment of that, which would have taken an exceptionally longer time to specifically animate, rather than let the software computer system do all of those things naturally. Mm-hmm. So cool. Love it. Computer animation is so cool. Wow, guys. Good job.
And after that film, it's really impacted a lot of films after that, because didn't Brave come after Tangled? Yes? I believe it did. But Merida's hair is also an extreme work. And
oh, yeah.
I think the animators have a lot to be thankful for in that, because of, the work with Rapunzel's hair, Merida's hair was still a challenge, but it, was possible. They knew it was possible because Merida's hair is, a big afro, basically, of red curls. And I think there's some fun fact about how long her hair would be if her hair was straightened. I don't know the number, but just thinking about movies after Tangled that have been impacted.
Because Brave was 2012 and Tangled was 2010. So yeah, even as soon as then. And Frozen, because go listen to our Frozen episode, because I talk about Elsa's hair in that too. Yes. Hair, guys.
She has great hair.
Hair. All right, so we've thoroughly geeked out about Tangled, but I think we're going to do so again because, Emma, I don't even have to ask you what you've been watching recently because we've been watching it together. We've been watching Tangled, the series.
It's so good.
Or also known as Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure.
Right.
Oh my goodness. So some people get a little sad that Tangled doesn't have a sequel when Frozen does. Well, guys, Tangled has something better than a sequel. It has 3 seasons of a phenomenal television series that dives deeper into Eugene and Rapunzel's amazing relationship. They develop even more. They go through challenges together. They are perfect and beautiful in every way. And also, not to mention, all of the phenomenal new characters in this series that I am so emotionally attached to. Varian. And the music. Alan Menken writes all of the music for the series as well. And he wrote the music for the movie. And again, it has the same voice actors, so you get more of Zachary Levi's beautiful voice.
Yep.
So good. And Jeremy Jordan. If you're a fan of Newsies, you need to be watching this show. Jeremy Jordan plays Varian, my favorite character. And his voice is also phenomenal. So
yeah, it's incredible, especially because I think we all want more of Tangled. Like it is a beautiful whole entity on its own, but like we just want more because we love the characters so much. And Tangled the series is phenomenal. It takes place between the end of Tangled and before if you've seen the little Disney short of Tangled Ever After, it happens in between those two films. So it's definitely worth it, and you just get to go deep into the characters, and the music is beautiful.
Yes. And the lore of the world, there's so much more about the sun drop that, you know, comes to light, and so many other
magical powers, things like that, you know.
You get to learn more about Gothel and Mother Gothel's history.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And we hinted about it earlier, but you also get some more backstory on Eugene. It is so good.
It is so good.
Yeah.
Take a watch.
If you are a fan of Tangled at all, you need to watch this series.
Amen.
All right. Thank you so much, Emma, for joining me. This has been a blast.
Oh, I've had so much fun. This has been so great, especially in person.
Yes, really I just love that you're here. Tangled is just one of my favorite films, and I just feel like we should go watch it again.
Yeah, right.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, see ya. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening. Emma and I had so much fun discussing Tangled together. Let us know your thoughts about this or any of your other favorite animated media on Facebook and Instagram at Fanimated Podcast. You can also email us at fanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. The art for this podcast is done by me. You can find me on Instagram at CandorDraw. The music is provided by Purple Planet Music, and a huge thank you to Emma for joining me today. We will talk to you in a couple weeks about another animated princess. But in the meantime, stay tuned and stay animated. There are over 45,000 lanterns in I See the Light. 45,000, what?